Welcome back, everybody, to STR Wealth Academy. I'm Katrina.
Michael here.
And we are the co-founders of STR Wealth Academy, everything Airbnb's short-term rental and how to build up your own Airbnb business in 2024.
So on the last preceding videos, we've gone through quite the journey together. So in this video coming up, we're going to talk about pricing because now if you've been watching the series and you have your listing up and running, you need to get it booked, right? And you need to have people coming through, starting to get reservations coming in, have guests staying at the property. But one of the main reasons that causes success or failure, people that get into short-term rentals, is having a strategy around pricing.
Pricing is massive. If you've looked into any of our testimonial videos and seen with our students, pricing is the number one thing that everyone comes, honestly, a lot for our training for. And it's like the strategy around it. Because a lot of short-term rental hosts out there leave so much money on the table because they do not have a pricing strategy. And a lot of times they will go with static pricing or honestly just the spaghetti method, throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing if it sticks.
What we want to talk about is to give you guys kind of a framework of how to think about pricing, and then we'll give you some specific ideas on how to actually implement this in your business, okay? So when we're working with our students, the concept that we really like to break down just to give all the different components of a pricing strategy is something we call the pricing pyramid, because it's a multi-layered approach and strategy that really drives results and also helps you charge the highest nightly rates possible and also get the highest occupancy that you can. So the first base layer, if you're thinking this in terms of a pyramid,
is know your numbers. So what do we mean by that? It's saying, okay, if you own a property, a short-term rental property, what is the mortgage? What's the operating cost of your unit? If you're doing rental arbitrage, you also need to know your daily operating costs. Like, what does it actually cost to run the property? And you need to have this calculation in order to know what to charge in order to make a profit on the property.
This is really important because at the end of the day, if you understand how much it costs, because when you think about short-term rentals, you're making money because you're renting it out on a nightly basis, right? With long-term rentals, we're renting time by the month. Here, we're generally renting time by the day. So if you know how much it costs to run your listing on a daily basis, you know what your rent, roughly what your utilities are going to be, what your supply costs, maintenance, cleaning, all of these things. So let's just use as a simple example. Let's say you rolled all that up, and let's just use a number of $3,000 a month. Let's just use a nice round number. What you would do is you would then take that number, divide it by 30, so you would have a rough idea of what it's going to cost to run your listing on a daily basis. Once you have that number, then that will tell you how aggressive you can be on your pricing strategy to know how much you can discount to still break even on days that are maybe less desirable to book. Because when it comes to the next layer of the strategy, and we'll talk about dynamic pricing in a sec here, by knowing that number, then you know how much you can drop your rates to still get booked, to still cover your costs. And by doing so, that's actually going to help you improve the amount of profit you're going to make at the end of the month. This is a concept called revenue management or contribution margin. So on some days, you're going to make more profit than other days, okay? Weekends are going to be more desirable. Holidays are going to be more desirable. Things going on in your area are going to affect what you can charge. But there's going to be days that there's just not going to be as much demand, okay? But you still want to get people booking and coming through on your calendar because, if you're just getting booked on weekends and you're not getting booked from, say, Monday to Thursday, that's leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. And ultimately, by having those dates empty, well, you're just essentially losing money and eating that on a daily basis every night that's not booked.
So knowing your break-even costs and what it actually is your operating costs for the unit on a daily basis is so important for this concept. Now, as Michael alluded to earlier, there is another layered strategy in here, and that is using
your market. You need to know what your competition looks like. You need to know what other competitors are charging, what kind of amenities they're offering. Now, in a previous video, which we'll have linked up just above here, we go through some competitor analysis and how to start finding some of this information, using tools like Airbnb and the like. But this is really, really important because at the end of the day, when you launch your listing, you got to know what other people are charging, what's actually realistic in your market, because you don't want to come out with a very similar property, be way out of line in terms of what the market is actually getting, because then what's going to end up happening is your place is going to sit empty and everyone else is going to get the guests and you're not.
And this has a multi-layered effect. If you don't know your right market, you don't know the right pricing that you're having, you're going to sit empty and it's going to drop your SEO, and you won't be able to recover from that because you're not setting up a strategy from the get-go. So this is how important these layers are. Now, the next thing, dynamic pricing. So when I had said earlier, the spaghetti strategy of if you don't have a strategy going in, what a lot of hosts do is they'll just throw any numbers, kind of up and see if they can get booked. There's no real rhyme or reason of how they're trying to get booked, why they're trying to get booked, and they just feel that it should be charged this much. And one of the biggest things you would see is quite a bit of hosts will use static pricing, which is the same nightly rate throughout the year. It could be just like $200 across the board. Doesn't matter if it's a weekend, doesn't matter if it's a weekday, doesn't matter if it's an event, it's static pricing. And you can get booked, but in a lot of ways, you're either not getting booked enough or you're getting booked too fast because you're leaving money on the table. So that comes in with dynamic pricing. So that within its name itself is dynamic. It changes constantly. And really what that means is you're charging different dollar amounts for different days, different events, different demand, and what's happening in your market and your competition. So dynamic pricing is one of the key variables that you want to be making sure that you're putting into your listing. You can do this manually, but we personally recommend a software to do this. And there's multiple dynamic pricing softwares out there, and this is like a game changer when you're looking at it. Instead of you being like, okay, great, there's the Super Bowl coming, or like that's a big event, obviously, but other ones like concerts or other kind of festivals to your city, there's actually softwares and algorithms that will go out and look to see what kind of events are happening, look at what your competition is charging, what is the size of your house, what kind of amenities do you have, what should you be charging. And this is massive and really, in my view, required to really make sure that you are at the higher level game to make sure you're getting the highest income possible for your unit.
Now, there's a few different tools that you can look at and use. There's softwares like PriceLabs, there's Beyond Pricing, there's Wheelhouse. We've tried them all. We personally ourselves use PriceLabs. We feel it has the most feature sets, the most customization ability as far as just some of the different ways that you can really set your pricing, automate a lot of the different discounting strategies to get your listings full. We'll do a separate entire video on pricing with that software specifically, but you definitely want to incorporate dynamic pricing into your overall pricing strategy and use a third-party software tool to really help maximize the amount of revenue coming through. Okay. Now, with all that being said, in most things that we've seen in the short-term rental training space, a lot of people just stop there and they kind of say, well, as long as you have a tool, you're good to go. In our world, that's not the case, okay? Because ultimately, there's a few more layers of what goes into pricing, which can really maximize the amount of revenue that you'll realize on your short-term rental property, okay? So moving up to the next layer of the pricing pyramid, this is what we call length of stay discounts. And length of stay discounts, as the name implies, you give a discount based on the length of stay, okay? So if someone's staying 3 nights, there might be a discount of say 10 to 12%. If someone's staying 4 nights, maybe a slightly different amount. Weekly and then monthly, okay? Now, if someone's gonna be staying longer, it stands to reason that they're gonna want to have, some better pricing efficiency on their booking. But in order to still come out ahead on this, what we personally like to do is we incorporate a strategy called marking up to mark down, okay? So by using a tool like a dynamic pricing software, we will intentionally price our listings slightly higher than some of our competitors, but we still get booked at superior rates because we use strategies like length of stay discounts in order to attract the right kinds of guests coming through, but still have really good margins coming in on our listings.
And this is really crucial when you're looking at length of stay discounts because yes, we are in the area and game of short-term rentals, and by nature, you're going to get shorter term guests. However, the best kind of guests that we like to have are longer term guests. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, but how do you attract better guests, longer stays, and premium pricings? This is one of the main strategies with it, lengths of stay discounts, because you want to incentivize people to stay longer, and that's with a higher discount with longer stays.
Now, there's a number of different ways that you can set this up, but to get into the discounting strategies for less than a week, you're going to need to turn on your Airbnb Pro Host tools, which is going to be in the back end of your your account. A couple ways you can do it. You can just go into your settings on your account, and then there'll be a tab in the back end that will enable you to toggle on the Pro Host tools. Another way to do it is if you just simply go to airbnb.com/multi-calendar. That will actually force load the Pro Host tools onto your account and will automatically enable them for you.
All right, so let's go to the very top of the pricing pyramid where we have rule sets. So rule sets are essentially the trump card of all the different pricing strategies we talked about here today. These are the rules that override any of the other strategies that you have. So length of stay discounts or any different kind of incentives that you may have. So rule sets are at the top, and this filters down to all the different ones that you may have already set up. So let's give an example here. So let's say you offer a 10% discount for 3 nights throughout the entire year. So that's one of your pricing length of stay discounts that you have in the back end. But let's say you have a rule set on the Airbnb calendar specifically for a 3-night gap for 30%. So you can do a gap that's coming up, let's say it's next week, right? So typically if someone was to book 3 nights, they would get that 10%, but you really want that 3-day gap next week to fill because it's happening really quick and it's still not booking. You can incentivize someone even further by doing a rule set on top of it, highlighting those 3 days, creating a 20% discount just for those gap days specifically. So now someone, let's say, was trying to book in December, like months down the road, they're not going to get that 20% because those days aren't highlighted with the rule set of the 20% that you just created only for that specific gap.
So rule sets can be a very useful tool in your tool belt when you're thinking about setting pricing strategy. There's a number of different kinds of rule sets that you can set up. That'll be the topic of another video coming up further in the future on the channel here. But again, the way to think about a rule set is it's kind of just like something that lays on top. It tells Airbnb specifically, give a different discount for these specific dates, okay? Because again, you wouldn't necessarily want to have that kind of discount further into the future, but the hardest days to book on your calendar are the days that either come immediately after a reservation or immediately before reservation. In our industry, this is what we call orphan days. Rule sets can be a very, very helpful tool to get these what we call gap nights filled by just giving additional incentives, additional discounts. And by doing so, Airbnb will actually promote those days higher up in search so that you can then get booked and then get those gap days filled.
That's a very good point. When you actually start utilizing a lot of these back-end like this day discounts on Airbnb, when you also start using the rule sets that they have available, you have a dynamic pricing software that's pushing to the Airbnb calendar and changing your pricing daily. All of these strategies are pushing you up in the Airbnb algorithm. So you're more visible. They're seeing you're using the strategies. You're really incentivizing people to book. And this is where Airbnb says, hey, you know what? These guys know what they're doing and we want to put it in front of more people. And so you actually have a higher SEO, search engine optimization on the platform, and you have a higher ranking so that they're going to put you in front of more people.
So hopefully these ideas are helpful to you to give you some ground to run on in terms of how to set up pricing on your Airbnb listings to maximize the amount of revenue that you have coming through, have a really high occupancy rate, but also generate a high cash flow and return on investment depending on what kind of strategy you're running for your specific rental property.
So if you found this video helpful, please save and like and subscribe at the top here. And we're going to have many more videos on this topic because it is such a multi-layered strategy, and it is so important to make sure you have a strategy coming into the space just to make sure that you're not leaving money on the table, and also that you have those premium pricing further down the road and it protects your pricing. So I hope you found this video helpful. We'll see you in the next video, guys.
Catch you later.